Boyd community garden, we saw a big compost pile, but this here is a type of compost that you can even do inside your house. You don't need a lot of space, and it actually is a little bit faster because you have some helpers to break down all the food scraps and organic material from your kitchen, and those little helpers are worms. So this is my worm bin, and I will show you it inside. Got some newspaper, got some bedding and some scraps, but inside I have these wormies, and these are red wrigglers. They are special for compost because they eat a lot faster than worms in your garden. So I'm going to show you how you can start with your own worm bin. And I actually started, my first worm bin was in a container like this size. So I'm going to show you how to build one. But then after about maybe 3 months, I upgraded to a bucket, and I had this for about a year. And then I finally moved to this tub system, which you are welcome to start with a big tub. But all you need is a yogurt container, an ice cream container to start your own worm bin.
Okay, go.
So worms like a dark, moist, not too hot, not too cold environment, and with lots of air space so that they can move around and they can breathe. And so we'll try to recreate that. So the first thing I'm going to do to my worm bin, or what I've already done, is I've drilled some holes in the lid so that they can have air to breathe. And at the bottom, I'm just going to break up some sticks. I'll move this over here. Break up some sticks at the bottom to make a little bit of some spaces down there. And your worms will actually eventually eat these sticks as well as the food that you add. So I have the sticks in there. Then I'm going to layer bedding and shredded newspaper so that we really have lots of air space in here for the worms. And for the bedding, I'm using coconut core or peat moss. You could even use soil from your yard for the bedding. And I'm just going to layer this and shredded newspaper. And to make it more of a damp environment, I'm going to just spray my newspaper with some water. More bedding and newspaper. Spray it. And then you don't need to feed your worms a lot. It's pretty easy to overfeed them, and then when you overfeed them, it can get really gunky and smelly. So you only need to feed your worms once a week, and at the very beginning you can give them a good 2 weeks rest before you start giving them more food. I'm just going to give them a little bit of some extra spinach and kale as their first meal here. And then now I get to add my worms. So for this small of a container, I'm going to add maybe 5 to 10 worms. It takes about 2 months for worms to lay eggs and reproduce, so your worm population will double in 2 months. So once you have more worms growing, you can give them to a friend if they would want to start worm composting, or expand into a bigger container. I'm going to add my worms, give them a little bit of a spritz. But then this is all you need to do. What I like to do is add a little label about the food that they like to eat, and you can find these linked below or online. Basically stick to vegetable scraps, no meat and dairy. Make sure everything is small pieces, because the smaller the pieces of food, the faster the worms are going to eat it and turn it into compost. And you can harvest compost with a colander in about 2 months and add it to your plants around your garden. I thought I'd just quickly show you my bigger worm tub, which actually has 2 layers, and the top layer has holes on the bottom so the extra worm juice or the worm casting, so the finished compost product, will fall through and I can harvest it easier. But these worms I got from the Green Spot in Alamosa, but you can also find these red wrigglers online. And you can even use regular earthworms you dig up in your yard. They'll be perfectly fine. They just won't compost materials as fast as these composting worms. But there you have it. Pretty simple. All you just need to do is every time you add food, add more shredded paper or bedding so that you have a good ratio of fresh compost materials and bedding for your worms.